Welcome to the Raging Hard On podcast. I'm your host, Brian Banks. We're here to get raw and real and talk about all these fucking feelings. So if you're coming back and you've been here before, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Without further ado, let's go. So I'm excited about our guest today because this really touches closer to home to me than a lot of people in my life realize today. And our guest is Dr. Dallas Bragg, and he runs a program and a podcast it's mostly for gay men in addiction and recovery from methamphetamine. So this is something that's special to me. When I first saw you online and heard what you were saying, it resonated, but it's been 20 years ago for me.
Wow.
That I struggled with meth, which I would say a lot of people in our community have. And I'm sure things have changed. And once you get out of that life, I know for me, it just feels like everybody quit using when I quit using. Because I'm not around it, I don't see it. And, you know, I got so far away from it when my son was born. But introduce yourself. Tell us about Dallas Bragg and really what this program is you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me, by the way. Your podcast, I was watching some of your podcasts before I went on. I was like, wow, he has a lot of fun. I feel very starchy in my podcast. But I kind of, I'm always thinking about ways to teach and help. It's such a serious matter. I do try to get more lighthearted than I am. It's just the things that I hear on a day-to-day basis are difficult sometimes for me to process. So I'm kind of like sometimes too straight and narrow. So I appreciate the fun that you have in your TikToks. But yeah, Dr. Dallas Bragg, I have a doctorate in nonprofit leadership. Right before I went into meth addiction, I received a doctorate. And basically, I was going to school it was one of the ways that I was numbing out what was happening inside, is that I could spend my time on school. So I got every degree that I could possibly get. And then once I got my doctorate, I went straight into crystal meth.
So what was going on inside that you were...
Yeah, well, this for a long time I thought my story was so unique, but it really isn't. But I grew up in a southern West Virginia town. I was always different. I was rejected by my dad. I was really rejected by my mom and her family too, because they were Pentecostal.
So was I.
Yeah, good. And I gravitated toward the Pentecostal side because my mom was nicer to me,
Oh, yeah.
and I had really made a pact with myself that I was going to be as different from my father as I could possibly be. And so I went that way. And so in going that way, I came to believe that I was demon possessed, and that I just lived in this fear that if Jesus came back right now, I would be going to hell, because I was always thinking about a man or having a fantasy or whatever. And then, the internet wasn't a thing, so I had a Men's Health subscription that was my pornography, and so
You didn't even have access to... He had porn around
no,
you?
no. I lived out in the middle of nowhere, and
I've been
of
to
course
West
we had
Virginia.
yeah,
It's beautiful, but it is definitely the heart of Appalachia. It is
yeah.
mountainous and thick with trees and roads that go forever into tiny little country towns. It's beautiful. But
Yeah, I mean, the county that I grew up in still doesn't have a traffic light. That's how
the
slow
county
paced
doesn't?
the whole county. Yeah,
Holy shit. How many
very
people live
rural.
there?
Yeah. You know what? That's a good question. I don't know.
So you grew
Probably
up
the same as
in
the.
so you grew up in the Pentecostal
So
church.
yeah, Pentecostal church, West Virginia, and so anyway, I was long story short, I spent my life being closeted and in fear, shame, all that kind of stuff. So when I was graduating high school, I was afraid to go out in the world because I didn't want to pursue that life. So I got married to a woman, obviously, and it was just felt really safe. And then we started having kids, and so when the kids came along, I felt even more safe because number one, I knew I would never cheat on my wife, and number two, I had kids to be responsible for. So I just dove into taking care of my family, and that was my identity, right? So meanwhile, though, in behind the scenes, I would go up to church. I would, renew myself and get saved again or whatever. Think that I was clear and done with homosexuality, and then 2 weeks later, when we finally did get internet, it was like dial up. So, but I would still sneak. I would be sneaking at 2 a.m. and look in those AOL rooms, waiting for a picture to load. I don't know how old you are, but you had to wait line by line, kind of like a dot matrix printer
Yeah,
to
I
get the
remember.
full picture. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I just but anyway, I would catch myself doing that, and then I would be in this shame this shame cycle of I'm free, and no, I'm not. I'm going to hell. I hate myself. I'm free. I'm going. And I kept journals throughout that whole time, and just the cycle of shame and self-loathing was just it's sad.
And you told the truth in these journals, like you wrote down
I
what your
would
desires were.
no. So
Okay.
I had little code words for masturbation and porn that I used.
Do you remember what they were?
Let's see. TV, I think, was porn, and then masturbation was something like it was a weird word that I made up. Like I don't remember. Something to do with my hand. I don't remember what it was.
Because I know, like, for me, just saying the words in the mirror, for me to, like, look myself in the eyes and say, faggot, you're gay,
Yeah.
was a huge meltdown moment. So I could have never
Mm,
written it down.
ah,
But
yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah.
interesting that you kept a journal. Had you done therapy or anything when you were younger to learn, like, journaling and,
No, I'd never done therapy. So when I came out to the first person I came out to, I was 30, and my workplace offered one free counseling session, therapy session, because they were partnering with somebody, right? So I went because I was at this point where there was a tree on the way to work that I had planned to crash into and kill myself. Every morning I would look at it and plan it because I couldn't take it anymore. To try to live like this,
had
as
you been with
many
men
of
at all?
no,
So literally
no.
just the fantasy and the Men's Health magazine.
Well, we were at this point we were at the AOL,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
I was
So
able to download. At the time, it was called an AVI point eight or like dot AVI. It was a little movie. It was like
yes, I
30
remember
seconds.
those, which
Yeah,
is not
I
nearly
had that.
long
It was a
enough to
free.
finish.
It depends on how many times you watch it over and over.
And I will say,
So,
back then, before porn was so free and at our fingertips, it was much easier to imagine and
yeah,
jack off with
yeah,
just our thoughts.
yes. Well, it's
That would
come
be
to
really
help.
difficult for me today to just lay in a dark room and
Uh,
get to the end.
yeah. Well, that's where I am though, because I have a no porn policy for myself. And so when I do, which I also practice semen retention. So I'll go 5, 8 weeks without ejaculating.
Oh dear Lord,
But I
why do
do
you do
use my
that to yourself?
imagination if I do. Well, it for me it increases my energy. It increases my creativity. I'm able to redirect it, transmute it into other things. I write better. My testosterone goes up, so I'm better at the gym. And it's a matter of, for me personally, it's reminding myself that I'm in control of my life now. I'm in control. That my dick is not in control of me anymore because it controlled me for so many years.
Yeah, I've read like where guys are doing that, and I can see where that would be a big deal if that was a driving force to you. You know, we've been in a relationship for 9 years now, and still have a really good sex life, but it's not it's not all there is anymore. You know, so
Yeah. Mm.
it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
taken it's taken a long time to get there. I mean, those first few years are, ooh, we either fighting or fucking, fucking or fighting. So, you know, that's how the beginning of gay relationships go. If it weren't for the
I
sex,
wouldn't
they'd all
know.
end. Have you never had
Yeah.
one?
I had one right when I came out, and I wouldn't even call it. It was a fucking train wreck, from beginning to end. And I had to literally beg for sex. So it was not it was not the best way to start. And I haven't had a relationship since. Um,
By
I'm just
choice?
now after by choice. I'm just
Is this a
now
choice you're making, or
now the kid. Yeah, it's a well, it's a choice I've made. Yeah. It, yes and no, but yeah. But now after 6 years, and both of my kids are out of the house, I've decided, okay, I'm gonna put myself out there and try. And been very, the I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So far, I'm like, I don't. The apps are no different than they were as far as Hinge. I tried Hinge. It's supposed to be a relationship app, but
oh, I tried
I'm just
when I was single before I got into this relationship. We've been together 9 years. I was with my ex for 9 years, and yeah, the apps are just there. It's the same old people, but I did meet my partner on an app. However, he was living, you know, 10-hour drive away, and we just
uh,
chatted and chatted, and we were seeing other people. And
mhm.
one day he reached back out to me, and I was like, listen, if we're going to talk, like, we need to meet in person. So we met in Atlanta one weekend, and I was not yet at the place of wanting a relationship because my therapist had told me, she said, do you even know what Brian likes? Like, she goes, I hate to encourage
Yeah.
you to do anything against your morals, but I think this would be a good time for you to be a whore,
Oh
a
yeah.
really
Hmm.
honest, upfront
Yeah.
whore, and tell people,
Yeah.
you know, I'm only in this for this. Are you cool with that? And that's what I did. And boy, was I mastered that fast. But, you know, I'd
Oh
been
yeah.
clean for so long. I'd been clean for 10 years
Uh,
and not done meth. And I will say, like, I never went through a program or anything to stop using. And
Interesting.
I never went hardcore as far as I still drink. I might drink twice a year.
Mm.
And it just never was my thing. Meth was the
Yeah.
thing that had me by the hair immediately.
Hmm.
I loved it.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
today, like looking back, I can't imagine. I can't imagine being around people that do it. I've had people reach out to me and ask for help, and I'm not really equipped, and I just try to
Yeah.
be as honest as I can with them
Yeah.
about where they're at. So
Yeah.
when did the drugs start for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll skip all the. So I went into after my therapy visit. I went into a mental facility, and that's when I came out to my wife. So at 35, 35, yeah, at 36, sorry, I decided to come out. It was either that or die, and then I also saw that my wife and I were brainwashing our kids with church, and they weren't able to think on their own. And I was like, I can't.
Yeah.
This is my responsibility to provide them the type of father that's honest, but also encourage them to think on their own. If you have an opinion, why do you have this opinion? That kind of thing. Not just do what I say because the Bible says. So I came out. So I did it I had waited so long that, well, you asked me if I'd been with a man. So at that point, still hadn't. And so we separated in the house. I slept in the guest room, and I thought, you know what? I better try this because what if I don't like it? I'm tearing everything apart here, and so that's when I discovered Grinder. And went out and tried it, and yes, that was for me, and I was for sure. And then I just left like a week later.
Immediately, like, yes.
Yeah, this is it. Like
Um,
I
I like
actually.
it.
Actually, the first I met behind I met behind the Lowe's. This was like at I don't know 1 a.m. or something like that.
Oh, that's
This
super romantic.
this boy, I got in his car. Anyway, just putting my hand on his back and feeling muscle, and then kissing him, I immediately came, like without touching myself. Yeah, yeah. And he was not happy about that. But I was like, he didn't believe me. Because, you hear this all the time too on the apps, like, this is my first time, that kind of thing. And
Uh-huh.
he didn't believe me. But I tell you, like, this is the first time I have ever touched a man, I promise. And then when that happened, he believed me. But I knew, at that point, I was like, yeah, this is for me. This is what I want. Yeah, so I left a week later. I mean, I didn't waste any time, and my wife was devastated, because I had propped the three of them up. They were my projects. They were where I got my self-worth for so many years. They didn't have to think, feel, do nothing. I was their crutch, and I wiped it out. Just wiped it out, and I just went full force. So you talked about the horror era. I immediately went into that. Because I still hadn't fixed what was the underlying issues. I still needed attention. I needed affection. I needed approval. I needed some place that accepted me because I didn't get that growing up. I found that in my marriage, but it wasn't real. So then when I didn't have the marriage anymore, I found it on Grinder. And what happened was I thought in my mind that it would be these rainbows, glitter, welcoming me, welcome to the family, we're so proud of you, blah, all that kind of stuff. I really thought that I would walk into a gay bar, which, by the way, I had never even walked into a bar, period, straight or gay. The first time was 36, walked into a gay bar, and I really expected me to start meeting people and having that kind of response. And it was nothing like that.
Just like a glitter was
It
going
was,
to pop out
yeah,
and they were going to give you your new toaster for joining. And
yeah, or
isn't it
something.
funny that,
At least be
but
nice.
when you are younger, I will say, when you come out at an early age, I was sneaking into the gay bars. It is a
Uh,
lot easier, and there's that zeal and excitement from everybody your age. Whereas as you get older, the gay bar is different. And
yeah,
you have
yeah,
the guys against the wall that never found anybody, but they show up every week and act creepy on the wall. I'm
yeah,
probably the age of those guys now, but I'm thinking back, they were old and creepy, and it's
yeah.
probably me today. Um, but it was different.
Well,
I think when you come out later in life, it's a
it
totally
is.
different fucking.
It is. It's a totally different scenario, and we can get to this later. But there's this phenomenon now. These older guys are coming out and going straight into meth because of what I just said. They think that they're going to walk into a community who approves of them, who welcomes them, who invites them to parties, and it doesn't work that way. It you have to. For me, I heard more about how feminine I sound and act when I first came out than I ever did when I was closeted from gay people judging me. I heard more about how I was dressed and how I looked, and I had to fight to get into groups like it was Survivor, you
Yes.
know. And so that is when you have waited all your life and then you get there and you in your mind, in my mind, I thought This was the answer to my identity problems. This was the answer to my sadness, my depression. I'm gay now that I have found everything I needed. And so when you have that kind of expectation and it busts you in the face that it's so wrong, then you turn to drugs because when you have that baggie, all of a sudden everyone loves you.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're daddy, and all the boys come around. They don't ask any questions about how you act, how you sound, what you look like, what you're wearing, because you're not wearing anything. But that's your ticket into the community when you're an older person, when you're an older guy.
And like there are different groups. I think the bar is not the place to find
Right.
that community, but there are so many civic groups, and there's a lot of people that aren't in the bar scene. There are, well, like there's meetings and group therapies. But
Yes.
there's also,
There-
we tend to disappear from that scene the older we get. Um,
yeah.
the younger ones are going through the trenches at
Right.
that
But
point.
for me, no one was there to tell me that. In my mind, all I knew about gay people were Will and Grace, the TV show, and the news coverage I would see for Pride, right? So I didn't know anything else but Grinder or go to a gay bar. I
Yeah,
didn't,
yeah.
for some reason, it never occurred to me that, oh, you know, Stonewall Sports or this or that, there's other places you can go and not get that kind of treatment per se. It's also the city I came out in too. And
Absolutely.
there's some clicks, there's some issues there.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's a phenomenon right now of older men getting into this drug. And then there's the phenomenon of this influx of younger men trying it. And the reason they're trying it, these older men are giving it to them.
Yeah.
This is scientifically proven right now.
Because I think older men, we used to hear about sugar daddies, and they buy you gifts and they buy you things. But yeah, in the gay community, the daddies have always provided the drugs. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that they are able to give these younger guys. And it's one way to keep them hooked. Yeah, there's so much insecurity and shame. I think there's a lot of older guys that will go to any length to keep somebody attached to them because we never learn to really attach in a healthy way to each other.
That's right. That's
So
right.
it's
That's right.
so much
Yeah.
shit to unpack in the entire community. But I do feel
Right.
right now like things are starting to shift and we're starting to explore our trauma. We're starting to unpack some of these bags that for so many years we've just ignored because we were fucking fighting for our lives.
Yeah.
And now that things have calmed down a bit for us, then all of a sudden we still have things to fight for, but not fight like we used to, not fight like the AIDS crisis and trying to get equal rights to marry. And I feel like as that calms down, we're starting to really explore the things that we deal with as a community, as a whole, as a collective. So,
Yeah, and that's part of what I didn't get at the time is that
hmm,
I was a traumatized man dealing with other traumatized men,
yeah,
you know, and the two together, you're not going to get two negatives are not going to make a positive, right?
no,
And so I spiraled. I spiraled in every way, and the hope that I would belong anywhere was diminished. I'd spent my life thinking I didn't belong anywhere. This is where I was going to belong, and I didn't. That's why I turned to crystal meth because I did belong there in my mind.
So how were you introduced to it? Just as at a hookup or?
Yeah, yeah. It was Sunday afternoon, and the guy asked if I partied, and I was like, Sunday after, and at the time I was drinking a lot. So I was like, yeah, I party. I'm thinking in my head, literally thinking in my head that it's like day drinking, music, whatever.
Yeah,
And then I
I
get
get
to
it.
this house that's overgrown, broken down, but the guy that came to the door was hot as fuck, and I was like, oh, okay, well, we'll do this, you know, and I come in and there's a sling and there's porn everywhere and a mess, you know, and I'm just like, I don't, okay, you know, still, the guy's still hot, you know, and then he offers me the pipe, yeah. And he said, you said you partied. And I was like, I don't know what this means. You know, I didn't know what to do with it. And so anyway, long story short, he showed me how to use it. He had GHB as well. And so 36 hours later, we stopped fucking, you know, and I was in love. I was in love with the drug. I was in love with the experience. There was something about this guy, not just that he was hot, the way he looked at me, the way he touched me, the way he wanted me, those things I had waited forever. 36 years, 37, 38 at the time, whatever. 38 years I had waited to be treated that way. I
Mm.
didn't know it was drug fueled. You know, I didn't know it could have been any man standing there and he would have probably acted the same, right? But it was exactly like this. Wow, he really, I belong here. He really wants me. I don't have to be self conscious about how I act. And you know, and then we, you know, had sex forever and ever and ever. And I immediately fell in love with him. Of course, he disappeared, you know, forever, for a long time after that, doing whatever he was doing. But then I would, of course, as you know, you start chasing that first time, and
Yes.
that the experience never happened again. But I fell in love with every one of them. Every man that ever come to my house to party, I fell in love with.
So you started
Yeah.
seeking out and asking people if they partied immediately.
Oh yeah, immediately. I jumped in. I mean, so I was making six figures at a law school. I was and also had my first adjunct position as an instructor. So I was making probably 140 a year. And I jumped in with both feet. I went in. I couldn't have it was immediate. And so from that day, 3 years later, I had been arrested 4 times, lost my house, lost my car, lost the kids, and I was living under a tree, still
Wow.
trying to steal. I got addicted to shoplifting, still trying to steal to get the drugs every single day, even though I had nowhere to live. Yeah,
Wow.
quickly.
That's, for me, it was, I started, somebody gave it to me, and they actually told me it was going to be, I was such a fat kid growing up, chunky kid, and lost 100 pounds the year I came out. And I
Ah,
really was dealing with, because the first time I ever went to a gay bar, I was chunky. The next time I went to a gay bar, I was skinny.
hmm.
The second time I went, I had a pocket full of phone numbers.
Yeah.
Then I met, like, the boys liked me then. And all I ever wanted to do growing up was kiss boys. I just wanted to kiss boys so bad. Um, I finally kissed one my last year of high school, and we hooked up behind my church. And, I was crazy about him. I knew it wasn't going to work out, but I wanted to marry all the boys. I wanted to kiss all the boys because I went to seminary after that first boy. I went to seminary with shame,
Oh,
but
nice.
somebody gave me meth the first time and told me it was going to be FDA approved for a diet pill. And
And it was probably right.
they put it in a capsule, and I took it and I took it. And one night we're at this beautiful man's house, and just a little snobby party. And I was invited, little fat Brian was invited to the party. And the news, this was, 20 something years ago. And the news started talking about meth a lot because it was just
Mm,
becoming a big problem.
yeah.
And it's on the news. We're all watching, talking. And I said, oh my God, can you imagine anybody doing that? Like, they were
Mm,
talking about battery acid and strychnine and
mm.
all these things that were in it. And I'm like, can you imagine? And everybody looked at me like I was insane because I've been up for 2 days with them. And and the guy I was dating was like, can you come in here and let's talk? And I was like, sure.
Yeah.
He goes, what the fuck are you doing? You're on that drug right now. And I just remember nobody believed I was
Wow.
so innocent because I had never
Uh,
done
mm,
anything. and so innocent.
Yeah.
And he was so upset with me for embarrassing him in front of his friends because here I am
Oh,
doing the
wow.
drug and not realizing what it was.
Right.
But then I was like, oh, it's not that bad. So I kept doing it.
Oh,
But I went in and
yeah.
out of that. But wow, you went, I like this. I'm going for this.
Mm.
I'm throwing
Yeah.
everything into this.
Well, yeah, you have to think about,
Did you
like I
ever have
said,
moments where you wanted to? Did you ever have moments of realization where you were like, what the fuck am I doing? I mean, you literally lost
so
everything.
when I did, so when I contracted HIV, I had that moment, and I was sober for 4 or 5 months, because I thought, okay, this is now, this is my rock bottom, right? I was paused. So if you don't know what pausing is, it's a fetish. It's kind of bigger in the meth community. There's two sides of it. There's the guys that like to give it, and then there's the guys that like to be risky with it. They're called bug chasers. They like you
Yeah,
to be
I've heard of
buggy,
that.
which means you don't take your meds. Well, this guy, so not only did he have whatever he had, HIV or AIDS, but he also injected me for the first time. And so either it came from his semen or it came from the dirty needle,
Did you know
but
he?
one or the other.
Did you know he
No,
had HIV?
no. After we were finished at the end, he said, "Congratulations, you have AIDS."
Continue to talk to this guy?
So, no, I didn't.
Wow.
He was also severely schizophrenic. He was talking to, he had all that he had been using for so long that he was out of his mind. But it's funny because he wasn't like that until the second he injected, you know. But I managed to
I
still have
never
sex with
did
the
that,
man.
and it may have been the only thing that saved me.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
like
yeah.
when we first started
It's
that
a
many years ago, we took it as a pill or we snorted it. And it
ah
wasn't until the last few years of it that I smoked it. Because back
oh
then, nobody even knew how to smoke it. And if you did it any other way than snort it, you were trash. So the day I smoked it is the day it changed and went dark really fast.
interesting.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
no, I never injected it. I have seen people do that, but I've also seen people find out that they were positive, that, as soon as they find out they have HIV, the shame they've had their whole lives compounds. And I've seen
yeah,
a lot of guys lose
yeah,
themselves to meth as soon as they find out they're HIV positive.
yeah. And that's what. So there's two things that can happen. You either come to your senses and stop, or you go on a death. You have a death wish. Yeah.
Which is not a death wish anymore.
Right. But
Um,
it's
I think we
the
know more in this community about HIV than we ever have before.
you would think so. I think pockets of us do. Now, when you're dating, like I just started putting myself out in the dating pool, and
Uh
you
huh.
say you have HIV, you would be very, very shocked at the lack of knowledge, the insecurities, the times I get blocked, the denials. I mean, it's rampant.
Really? That's surprising. But yeah, it's not. It's not something I've ever had to
Yeah.
really deal with. But I just know,
So
like,
that
we have so many friends, and it's really not a big fucking deal anymore. And I think realizing
yeah,
that every one of us, if we're honest, deserve it just as much as the next guy. We've all done things to contract it. I mean,
yeah,
we've all had
yeah.
unprotected sex. I don't care if you're fucking gay, straight, bi.
Right.
Everybody has had sex with a stranger without protection. And if you
Yeah.
judge a person that has HIV, you're a fucking disaster. Like, you're not self aware.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It makes me kind of angry because I have seen people struggle and be told things that they do not. We all fucking deserved it. So it's weird to me
Yeah.
that gay men in our community would have the balls to judge. Weird.
And I'm not coming to you from a negative perception of it. I'm coming to you for the reality of it because I'm
No,
in
I
it.
get that. I get that. I'm being
And
negative because it pisses me off.
no, it disappoints me because if you are a gay man in today's world, you should be educated about this, you
Yes.
know. And you should also know better than to ask me if I'm clean. I have a you want to see me get triggered. That's when I get triggered because have some respect also for
People ask if
your
you're
gay
clean.
brother. And hmm?
Clean.
What?
Does that
Yeah.
mean like negative?
That means, yeah, if you're clean, you don't have HIV. So what does that mean if you have HIV? That
Oh,
means
I
you're
thought it
dirty.
just meant did you douche?
No. Now that's a question. It's okay to say, are you cleaned out? You know. That
Yeah, I
that's
guess.
okay.
I'm like, bitch, no, I'm not clean. I'm walking around the fucking Home Depot. Like, you want to do this or not? I'm just kidding.
Right.
We've been
Well,
there.
you gotta stay, yeah. What is it? You gotta stay ready to be ready or whatever.
That's a good Boy Scout. You don't
Yeah.
gotta get ready if you stay ready.
That's right. You don't have to get ready if you stay ready. Yeah.
I've seen them like, we go to these big events all over the world. I mean, we've been to Italy for big parties, and
Mm.
some of those guys, they're like, they haven't eaten in 3 days. I'm like, girl, like, I'm not gonna starve. Like, somebody gonna get dirty before I go hungry for 3 days.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
that's weird to me,
Exactly.
but they do
It
it.
is
I mean,
weird. Yeah.
so
I
that's
know.
part of our
Yeah.
culture that a lot of people may not know about.
But you already have you're talking about all the layers of shame. Okay, you grew up gay, you have shame, and then you're an addict. That's shame. Okay, what you're addicted to, meth. Well, that's another layer of shame. Then you have HIV, right? And so yes, you can say you. And here's the thing: I heard from the time I was told I was positive from the nurse, it's not a death sentence anymore. Like, I got really fucking sick and tired of hearing that. I get it. Okay, I get it. It's not a death sentence. That does not help me in this moment. This does not help me deal with what I'm dealing with. It's escalated in my mind right now. And so I decided to stop for 4 or 5 months. But then when I went back in because of that. Because of
Yeah.
this fact that, okay, well, I already have HIV. So I was injecting meth 3 times a day, morning, noon, and
And
night.
before finding out you were positive, oh, the guy that showed you how is the one that had HIV.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
fucking heavy. Man, so you just went full force back into it. Did you do any therapy? Did they offer you, when you found out you were HIV positive, did they offer you any mental health therapy? Did they offer you?
No.
Because, I mean, that's like,
There was nothing like that. And that's why I volunteer
were you at a
for
gay
an organ.
clinic when you
No, it
found
was
out?
just a public health clinic. It was just some woman who sat there all day and told people they were positive or negative. I was just a fucking number to her with her practice. Well, it's not a death sentence anymore. And I just staggered out of the room, like, what? Now, so the doctor that I go to now they have free therapy, they have support groups, they have all the offerings in the world. They have a buddy system that I volunteer for. There are services now, but no one ever offered anything like that to me. And then, I just went back and I got enough time on the medication that I got undetectable. And at that point, I just ran back to it. Plus, I had those arrests hovering over me as
What year
well.
was
I had
this? What year was it when you found out?
So I contracted it on January 1st, 2017. So I was sober until the summer, early summer, about this time, I guess. And then I went back into it. That
How
was
long did it
2017.
take you to get to just because I know people listening will be interested in this. There will be people that are finding out they have HIV.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get to undetectable
It
once you
took
started the
me,
medication?
so it did not take me long because once he said that to me, I went to the doctor like in a few days. The doctor said if I had got an appointment a few days earlier, it may, beginning on the meds, could have actually reversed it completely.
Yes.
That was that quick. But I couldn't get into the doctor that fast. But I went and made an appointment, I would say, like the next day. But I didn't get into the doctor for 2 weeks. Anyway, I was undetectable within 2 weeks. I mean, it was real fast, real fast.
Yeah. Because I know they
Yeah.
have, I mean, we all know about PrEP, being on a daily pill, which I'm on,
Yeah.
my husband's on, we've been on since way before we met. And it's one of those things, it's taking care of your own health. I don't care if you're in a relationship. You cannot control what another person does. You just can't,
Yeah.
and however you live your life, if you
Right.
guys play with others but we
Yeah.
have always been on PrEP. And but I was exposed when I was single during my whore era. I was with this guy in Vegas. I really was so uneducated about HIV. I was just ignorant, even though I'm in this community, because in this community, when people find out they are positive, they don't talk about it because
Yeah.
of the stigma that is in it. And I think that began back in the 80s when so many people were dying with it.
Yeah.
My best friend, she found out in 1989 that she was positive. And she died a few years ago from kidney disease. Actually, she just had gotten an infection and it had gone to her kidneys. But it was actually
Wow.
all a result of those early medications. But I was still so ignorant about it, and had a condom break. The guy was like, I said, I'm sorry, I just got tested. You really don't have anything to worry about. You're the first person I've been with. And he was like, you got to get to the hospital. And I was like, why? He was like, I just found out I'm HIV positive. And I was like, well, can I get it? And he was like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know enough about it yet. And
Yeah.
I went straight to the hospital, and the doctor at the hospital in Vegas said, the chances of you contracting it being a top,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he's already started his medication, is probably like millions to one.
Yeah.
And he's like, but I was so scared, and I'm freaking out. I'm by myself in Vegas. And he said, but I will get you, I'll write you the prescription. There's a medication called post-exposure where you take that medicine for a week. And if you've contracted it and you get there within the first 48 or 72 hours, they can reverse it. So I did that.
Yeah. Nice.
That is
Good.
when I started learning about it.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because I went into a gay clinic when I got back to Alabama, and I was looking around, and there were sick people in this clinic. And they mostly dealt with people that had had HIV for a long time. And small clinic, and it was kind of shady when you pulled up. But there was this guy that was just pouring sweat, and he looked so sick. And the doctor walks in, and she is dressed like $1,000,000, and she has on this beautiful dress, and she walks over to him and hugs him as he's, this is how ignorant I was. He's sweating profusely. He is, and she takes her dress and wipes his face with it, kisses him on the face. And I was just like, what the fuck? We get back into the room, and I told her my experience, and she goes, so was that scary for you out there? And I went, a little bit. I said, and then I saw how you treated that man. She goes, you are more of a risk to them than they will ever be to you. And she really explained to me, she's like, their immune system is low, and you're worried about them affecting you. And
Yeah.
she was kind
Wow.
enough to teach me things and not
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
dismiss me as a idiot white boy.
That's right.
And
Wow.
it became really important to me then to learn so much about it. And
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
what I could.
Good.
So,
Good.
yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. It makes me it
But
makes
it
me
took
happy.
that moment for me. It
Yeah.
took, I'd never been faced it. And I came back and I told one of my close friends, he was a bodybuilder and worked out with me every day. And I told him what had happened. And I was like, it's been so scary. And he just hugged me and laughed. And he goes, "You've been around people with HIV a long time, idiot." And I was like, "I have." He was like, "I've had it for years." And I'm like, what the fuck is going on around? I had no clue because nobody was talking
Wow.
about it. Nobody
Wow.
was.
Yeah.
So when I have parents come to me and their child comes out of the closet, the first thing I tell them is get them on prep
Yeah.
immediately,
Mm-hmm.
educate them. You get educated on this. It's not scary,
Yes.
but this is one of those things like you really have the chance to protect them
Mm-hmm.
or just remain an idiot. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's not a death sentence, but it's still a medication you got to take every day. It's still something you got to go to doctors about. It's still an annoying thing to add on to a life that is already going to be fucking annoying in other ways. So I
Yeah.
get that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and now I take a pill with my vitamin. It's like taking a
Yeah, yeah.
vitamin every day. And I'm healthier today than I've ever been in my life.
You
Um,
look healthy. That's why I was shocked
yeah.
that you haven't dated. I mean, you're a good looking guy. Surely you've heard that on the apps.
Well, I I have very high I have very high standards, and I've also been very traumatized. I'll be honest with you. That's
High standards,
I
that'll fuck you up though.
I say high, but they're not that high. But this year, I decided I'm going to face my fears and my trauma and be around gay men. So I went to a big sober conference in Fort Lauderdale, like the gayest city that you could go to. Um, and I, made a pledge. No apps for me. There's no hooking up. I just want to expose myself. I want to see if the experience is any different than what I had before meth. And it was. It was.
So have you gone to
But
Pride or anything?
I went to Pride at the festival part where I volunteered for an HIV nonprofit, and so I handed out literature and stuff like that. So I saw the festival part, but it wasn't like I didn't go to the Pride events with overwhelmingly amount of gay men. I didn't go to bars, anything like that, because in my mind, I have had to overcome this thought that men are out to get me, that men only want to fuck, that men are conniving. There's so many messages that came into my head during my meth years, and it was the first years that I was gay. So there's these imprints that 6 years of sobriety I've had to work through and heal, process, and get and shift the perspective. So
I
I
really
just knew
love
I
what you're
wasn't ready.
doing.
I just wasn't ready to. I don't want to subject someone to me either. In terms of, I wasn't ready to date. you know.
Are you in therapy
So
now yourself?
I not at this moment. I have been in therapy. I honestly, my therapy is I have a group of people that have been my support network. We do plant medicine type therapies, psilocybin, ayahuasca. That's been my therapy, to be honest
Oh,
with
I've
you.
always wanted to do that. Yeah,
Well, I
that's
do it
cool.
locally in North Carolina, the ayahuasca part.
Really?
But I got into that right away in my sobriety, and it became my higher power. I didn't do 12 steps either. It didn't resonate
Yeah.
with me at all. And so back to my program that you're talking about. There's what I When I went through the justice system, when I went through treatment, when I went through therapy, I began to see real fast. And I used it, and like you said, things are changing,
Hmm.
but these institutions do not understand the nuances of helping and treating a gay man. Not only a gay man, but a gay man on crystal meth, right? Because all of my clients come to me saying, I went to therapy and I felt judged. I went to therapy and they just didn't get it. The treatment counselors made me do 12 steps, but they didn't understand that crystal meth users are going to relapse 3 times as much as any other drug. This is scientific also proof. They're going to relapse more in the first year than anybody else. You have to know that going in, but they get treated the same as everyone else. And so there's this whole other layer of shame coming up. Unneeded shame that I'm a failure. I can't stay sober. I need to do a walk of shame and get another chip. And I'm not, I must be doing something wrong. I'm not working the steps right. And that's not it. It's the nature of the drug and the addiction.
Yes, it is definitely. I know people that have never done crystal meth, they have an idea of what it is, and it is not that. It's nothing like, I like to tell people, when I did hair and clients would find out that I used to do that, I was like, have you ever taken a diet pill? They're like, yeah. I'm like, same thing, except it doesn't end.
Yeah.
You're not hungry. I was like, it's the same thing without all the bad side effects of the diet pill until it's too late and you've already gone to the bad place. Like the
Yeah.
first day is, but however, I never did IV drug use with meth. But yeah, the way I started with snorting, and it was not this crazy thing. It wasn't until later that it got crazy. And, you know, really the hallucinations and all of that stuff come from not sleeping, not eating, not taking care of your body. Yeah, it's totally different than people think it is. And that's what makes it such a trap for normal, good people.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel
Yeah.
scary
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you first start. It does get scary and dark after you've done it for a while.
Yeah, yeah. And it's the perfect chemical for a gay man because it magically erases your shame, your inhibitions. You get to explore sexuality in a way that you've always wanted to, but you can't get past this internalized homophobia that you have. I mean, it's a magic pill for all of that. And so once you experience that, that's what we're chasing. Like I tell these guys, it's not the fucking, it's not the sex that you're after. I promise. It's a peek into a world that you've always wanted. And it happens. All you have to do is inhale it or inject it, and you get it without doing the actual work on what's going on inside.
Yes.
And when you taste that life, it's like for me, like I was saying, it was an answer to the yearning in my soul for 36 years was all swept away in one puff of a smoke of a pipe, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what we chase for the most part. But then after a while, it becomes, you're dependent. Like you said, you're dependent on it. And then you cross over into hearing things and the shower speaking to you. And, I used to have phone conversations with nobody. I mean, it crosses into all that. And then you're just fucked. Because then you
Yes.
don't know what you're chasing.
I used to run
Then you're
from
on a sex drug
helicopters.
without any sex. What?
I used to run from helicopters,
Yeah. Yeah.
which turned out to be actual stars or planets, but
Ah,
they
yeah.
were helicopters to me and they followed me
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah. With
It's
with
so
probably
crazy to,
spotlights, right?
I don't know. I mean, it just makes you so crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy, like hearing
Yeah.
stuff, and it drove
Yeah.
me to the edge a few times. But yeah. So what kind of success are you seeing with your programs? About how many people do you have in your program?
So right now, I probably have in this minute 10 clients. So they go in and they go out, depending on. I like them to commit to 6 months, but some of them don't need 6 months because the guys that come to me are functioning. Like they've been sober, but they're relapsing maybe every couple of months, or they're just like they can't get past that last relapse, or they have been sober for 6 to 8 months, but they're stuck. Like there's no joy in anything. They don't know how to go forward. Like, okay, I've stopped using meth. Now what? And they need some help to turn inward and look to see, okay, now that, because the easy part a lot of times is quitting the drug. The real
Yeah.
work is after. You
Hmm.
know, when you have to
Did you
unpack and
read? Did you read or listen to that book I told you about, The Velvet
Velvet
Rage?
Rage.
Yes.
Yes, I listened to it when I went to Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah. What did you think?
Yeah, I liked it. I think he has.
He was an
I
addiction therapist.
Yeah, because I was thinking that when I was listening to his stages, I was like, those are yeah, that's the stages of recovery. You know, you're at this stage
It's
and
the
that stage, and
stages,
then
though, of all gay men. Like that
yeah,
book was the first time that I felt so seen.
mm-hmm,
Because
yeah,
now I realize, looking back, it wasn't the addiction, it wasn't the drug, it
right,
was, it was that part of my life, and showing how we, whether you choose the drug or you choose perfectionism, the same thing. You're still
yeah,
evading the truth and the shame that you have inside you. So that book was
yeah,
eye opening. And my
yeah,
therapist actually read that book. I still go to therapy. Like, even
mm-hmm,
if I go in and go, I've had a great week. Like, I just need to check up. I go every two
yeah,
weeks now.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, because it means so much to me to get things out, not put them on my husband. Um,
yeah,
and
yeah.
the older you get, you really don't have friends that you want to waste time talking about all your shit with. So
Well, I
therapy's
agree,
good for me that way.
and they have the best intentions of heart at heart, but a lot of friends don't understand how to help you process either. They want to either jump in and try to fix it for you
Hmm.
or compare it to their own life, right? And none of
That's
that
me.
helps.
I'm that
Yeah.
kind of friend. I'd be like, why don't you just do this? And then I'm like,
Right.
well, what? Well, we've been in this whole interview, and I'm like, oh, that reminds me of me. So it is. It's I love me, bless my heart. Um, but yeah, I do.
But I do suggest my clients also have a therapist because,
Hmm.
I'm not your therapist. Now that I do a lot of things that cross over, like I do some parts work, I do shadow work, I do a lot of guided meditations. Guided meditations have been, honestly, they have been the groundbreaking key to take somebody from I don't know what I don't know what to do next to getting in touch with themselves, their inner child, having a vision, having it. We create a past self, future self. We create a vision for a prophetic vision for who you want to be, what your life is like, and taking away all this attachment because you're not a crystal, you're not an addict. You are experiencing addiction. And that
Yeah.
little change in your wording alleviates so much shame and creates your own identity that, oh, this is something I'm experiencing. What's the best I can make of it? Instead of attaching, this is my identity. It's a life sentence. I'm an addict for the fucking rest of my life. And my addiction is doing push-ups in the parking lot, as they say in the 12 steps, what I cannot stand, because it just creates this whole fear of I can't go and do anything because it's always waiting. And if I if I get triggered in my life, I have to call a sponsor or I have to go to a meeting. Well, at that point, you're addicted to sponsors and meetings.
Hmm.
You're not in recovery. You're not recovered. So
Yeah.
what
It
I'm
wasn't
saying,
until I literally just said, Brian, fuck this. Like, this is your choice, your fault. You're doing this. Quit blame. There's always, always, always going to be a reason to do it again.
yeah,
And that was the thing. I'd
yeah,
be like, well, if this hadn't happened, and I was like, fucking grow up. Like, there's
yeah,
always going to be a reason to use
yeah,
until
yeah,
you just quit using. And
yeah,
my son, when he was born, I was like, I'm done. I'm done.
mm, yeah,
Because I had been such a piece of shit for so
yeah,
many years and let everybody down. And I guess he was kind of my one person. I was like, they may not think I'm shit. This kid's going to know that I'm a good
yeah,
guy. Because I
yeah,
wanted to be seen, but the shame was so
mm,
strong. But I think it helped because I was not a dad when I was doing it. I know for you, like, you were already a family guy when you were introduced to it.
I
I can't
was, I was.
imagine.
I was,
just
and
how
I
hard
had
that
the
is,
kids every
because
other
being a
week.
dad is hard.
Right. Well, it took away any responsibility. I mean, I had the kids every other week. So at first I was like, I'm only going to do this every other weekend. Or and then it was like, I'm only going to do this every other week when the kids aren't here. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, it's the weekend. They're at their friend's house, but they're my but it's okay. And then it just turned into every single day. They're in the house. I'm in my bedroom smoking. The back door of the house was my bedroom door. It was a sliding glass door that went out to a patio on the ground floor. So guess what? It became a conveyor belt of men coming in and out without them knowing, without the
Yeah.
kids knowing. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that was the first thing that I had to process in terms of the shame of what I had subjected my kids to, neglected my kids. I had, again, kind of pulled the rug out from under them when everything hit the fan and I lost the house, and here I am with my mugshot. My mugshot, the first time I was arrested, my mugshot's on the news. The kids' friends are Snapchatting them pictures of me on their TV. So there was a lot I had to get through. But the three of us, so you're talking about your kids. So what my decision point was the last time I was in jail, no one would answer my calls except my daughter because she always was concerned about my welfare no matter what I did to her. And I did a lot of things to her. I wrote bad checks on her account, all that kind of shit. But she answered my call. She picked me up with my son. They both picked me up. She was 16, he was 14. We went out to this park. It was my fourth time, and she was like, "We need you. We
Oh,
need you
wow.
to be a parent. We need a parent, and we need you to be that." And so I stopped. That was the day that I decided, okay, enough. Enough is enough, and I need to choose these kids over this drug. It's got to happen.
I know you're proud of yourself. You have to be proud of yourself to have come this far, and the work you're doing is so important. And I think it's so brave that you're saying it out loud. I watch some of your videos and I'm like, he just fucking said that. Like, everybody's been there. Everybody's done this thing. Who has ever been on meth? But you'll just fucking say it. And I think that is brave. And that authenticity, I believe, is what's going to change people's lives. And it's what's going to give you your purpose. Like, you got to get real before you can get effective. And that's the thing that
Yeah.
has stood out to me. Tell people where they can
Thank you.
find your program, where they can find you on social medias. And
Yeah, my handle is the same everywhere. It's Dr. Dallas Bragg, so Dr. Dallas Bragg. Anywhere you have social media. The most active I am is TikTok. That's where we met, right?
I meet
The most
everybody
active.
there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Every time the deeper I go and the more embarrassing thing that I admit on social media, the more healing it sends out to someone. And I get messages immediately saying, "Oh my God, I've been suffering and dealing with this in silence for so long. You said it, and for some reason, it changed something in me."
Oh yeah,
And so this is what I live for. It's every day I'm getting these messages. So Dr. Dallas Bragg, the podcast is the After Meth. If you type in After Meth, it's going to autocorrect to Aftermath. So make sure that you put the E in there if you do look up the podcast, and it's everywhere
and I'll
podcasts
put
are.
links on the bottom and
Yeah,
everything so
thanks.
everybody can find you. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and I have a free course. It's Reframing Relapse. It's a 4-week course. It is my heart and soul is in this, and I know it's going to make a difference in millions of people around the world. But you can get to it through TikTok or wherever. But I just launched it. It's free. It's free of charge. There's no questions asked. But people are going through it, and I just love it. That's been my favorite. It's been my favorite project so far, and I've really put my heart into it.
that's awesome. So they can find the course. And do you have a website?
I do. DrDallasBragg.com, drdallasbragg.com. The
You make that
website
so
is
easy. Everything's Dr. Dallas Bragg.
Yep, everything, everywhere.
Which,
YouTube as well. So, yeah.
like, what a name.
Um,
I mean, I hate to say it sounds like a porn name, but it
I
sounds like a
know.
porn name.
I have always heard that. I have always heard that.
Well,
Yeah, and even when I really thought I was a porn star when I was on meth and put a bunch of videos out there, and then
when today you could
changed
have
my.
been like with OnlyFans, but it,
Yeah,
yeah, I see
yeah.
a
That's
lot
the
of
thing.
guys get trapped in that. I see a lot of guys
OnlyFans.
get no, just addiction and meth, and they don't realize where it's taken them, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's it's one of the
You,
saddest things we see in our community.
I agree. I agree. And you're talking about how heroin kills people, fentanyl kills people. The thing about meth is that you don't hear a lot of overdoses from meth unless
No,
there's fentanyl in it because meth makes you want to be dead, but you can't die. And it
yes, it
takes
takes
it,
all your
it,
feelings, and
it takes away everything. It takes away your personality. You lose the light in your eyes. You're gone.
yes, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for doing this. I would like to maybe like you and I have another conversation because I'd like to delve more into like the different therapies that you're doing and all that. So maybe another episode where we
Sure.
can talk
Anytime.
about the plant medicine and guided meditation. I've just really started getting into meditation, and
Mm.
it's a growing
Yeah.
year.
Meditation is key for to me is key to begin to emotionally regulate because you respond to your world in a different way. It creates that powerful pause. And
Absolutely.
learning to meditate helps you do that. But guided meditation is a good step because people get scared of, well, I can't sit there and and I can't sit there in silence. My mind won't shut up. Well, guided meditation takes care of that. It's a bridge.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
love, I do guided meditations with my clients every time we meet. At the end, we do a guided meditation based on whatever we talked about. And it's very effective.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody go check out the podcast. Go check out his website. If you know somebody that is struggling or in active addiction or somebody who's facing a problem with meth right now, like, do share this podcast, share his podcast, share his information, because I know this is a real passion for him, and I feel like this is a program that could do so much for guys who we have kind of forgotten. I know I have. Once I got out of it, I didn't want anything to do with it. So I think that's brave of you too, and you're a good guy.
Oh, thank you. You are
I
too.
think so.
You're very, thank
So
you.
thank you so much, Dallas Bragg, Dr. Dallas Bragg, and until next time, because I've still got some questions for you. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Bye bye. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to share with your friends and family. Also, if you have comments, questions, or maybe you want to share your story, you can email me at raginghardonpodcast@gmail.com.